Hey everyone! Ever wrestle with God? He was like the #1 wrestler in the universe and had a stellar record, undefeated, untied. But one day this guy Jacob comes along and he wrestles God and actually manages to get a victory over him. How does that happen? Let's find out. Genesis chapter 32, verse 24. And Jacob was left alone. And behold, there wrestled with him a man whose nature was divine, and he struggled with him until daybreak. Now, up until this point in the story, we have seen how Jacob has been deceiving his brother Isaac in order to get the birthright blessing that was meant for his older brother, Esau. And now he is on his way to meet up with Esau after having run away years earlier out of fear that Esau would kill him because he stole the blessing. But on the night before he's gonna face off with his brother, he separates himself from his camp and goes off by himself, and he is alone, and that is when he encounters God. So what happens next? Well, we see that he wrestles with a mysterious figure all throughout the night. It says here that he wrestled with him until daybreak, so they must have been going at it pretty good. We don't know exactly what went down during this struggle, but I think it's pretty obvious that Jacob was losing. I mean, he's wrestling with God. If anybody can defeat God, it's only God. So why does he keep on struggling? Well, I think there are two reasons. First, he's desperate. This is his last chance. He's running out of options. He needs something to go his way, and this is it. He doesn't want to give up. That's probably why he didn't run away or try to escape. Also, I think he's persistent, which is actually a good thing. I mean, look at Jesus. When he fasted in the wilderness, the devil tempted him 3 different times, and each time Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." In the same way, Jacob keeps trying to hold on and he refuses to let go. And then suddenly this mysterious figure touches him, not on the shoulder, not on the hand, but right on the hip. It says here, then he reached out and touched his hip socket there. And Jacob's hip was immediately put out of joint as he said, "Let me go, for the sun is rising." Now, if this was a regular old wrestling match, this would be considered foul. Like, "Hey, don't touch my joints, dude. That's not cool." But this is God, and God could do whatever he wants whenever he wants, especially since Jacob was the one who started this whole thing. Remember, he sought God that night, so he should have expected the unexpected. I mean, think about what happened to Job. One day he's living the good life. The next day everything's taken away from him. Or think about what happened to Pharaoh. For years he lived as the most powerful man in the world, but when God showed up, all of that came crashing down. Jacob was expecting God to bless him and give him favor with Esau so that he could live happily ever after. But God turns the tables and humbles him instead. What does Jacob do? Well, he still refuses to let go. I mean, come on, think about that for a second. Here's God in his full glory, and he's telling Jacob to let go, but he's not letting go. Why? Because he wants more. He wants to prevail with God. And as long as he holds on, he will prevail. You see, even though he was defeated, he won because he held on until daybreak. But what does this victory get him? Well, that's where things get really interesting, because once he finally lets go, God gives him a new name, Jacob, which means he grabs by the heel, and he changes it to Israel, which means he struggles with God, In other words, this defeat turned out to be a real victory, and Jacob is no longer the deceiver, but he's the one who prevails with God, and that's why he gives him a new name. You see, up until this point, Jacob has been living under a false identity. He pretended to be someone else in order to steal the blessing from his brother. But now he's done wrestling with God, and God changes his name to reflect his new identity in him. Jacob is no longer the tricksy deceiver, but he's Israel, the one who prevails with God. Now, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. If he prevailed with God, shouldn't he have been rewarded with something bigger? Maybe like a blessing over his children or something like that. And yes, he did receive that as well. But I want you to notice that when he wakes up, he has a limp. It says here that he walked with a limp the rest of his life because of his hip. In other words, he was reminded every single day of his defeat. Why would God do that? Well, as believers, we know that God sometimes allows us to go through hard times so that we will remember what he has done for us. I mean, just think about the Israelites. Year after year, generation after generation, they were commanded to remember what God had done for them in Egypt, because it was easy for them to forget. They needed to be reminded. In the same way, Jacob had to walk with a limp for the rest of his life. It reminds him that he was defeated, but he was defeated for a reason, because now he gets to be called Israel, the one who prevails with God. And that new name changes everything. You see, his old name was Jacob, which means he grabs by the heel, and he used that name to deceive his brother. But now his name is Israel, and that means he prevails with God. He doesn't have to be deceitful anymore, because now he knows that he can prevail with God. Think about the difference between those two names. As Jacob, he was a liar and a deceiver, but as Israel, he was blessed by God and favored by God. And that's the difference between these two names. I mean, think about your own life. There's a good chance that you may have gone through some hard times recently, maybe even some defeats. But those defeats were not in vain. You can take those defeats and use them to help others. You can tell your story and be a light to people who are going through similar situations. And I know it's hard to see sometimes, but your defeats can turn into victories if you let God change your identity. You see, Jacob wanted to be blessed by God, but he ended up being defeated by God. And you would think that would upset him, but he liked it because God changed his identity. And that's the key. Your defeats can become victories if God can change your identity. So what's the lesson here? What should we learn from this story? Well, I think there are two important lessons. First, don't try to wrestle with God. He's too strong. He's undefeated. You're gonna lose. Second, your defeats can turn into victories if God changes your identity. Once he does that, then your name is written in heaven. So remember, don't try to wrestle with God, but allow him to wrestle with you and change your identity. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you better understand the Word of God. If it did, please subscribe. And until next time, everyone, God bless you.